Hi, thanks, Jen. I'm Monica Jain. I'm from Fish 2.0, and that 90 seconds yesterday, I talked about how Fish 2.0 connects seafood business and investors. I also have another business, Manta Consulting, and I advise philanthropists and corporates on strategy around ocean conservation, especially where it has to do with market-based initiatives. And today I'm going to talk about seafood traceability. And the reason I'm going to talk about seafood traceability is that it's really where the link is between technology, ocean conservation, and market-based work. And we've had a lot of talk over the last 24 hours on illegal fishing, and I think we all know that illegal fishing benefits no one. Usually not even the people that are doing it, because as most of you know that do enforcement, the people that are actually doing the illegal fishing are usually not earning very much money from it. It's someone farther up the line. And so we do need enforcement and legal work to make this happen, but we also have to get supply chains interested. And for that, we need some market policy work. I've been talking with the Trackwell rep from Iceland, and he's been telling me that they do have this traceability technology, and only a few companies are using it. And one of the things we have to recognize is that traceability comes at a cost. Most companies that are operating legally in other ways would like to know where their fish came from, but they lose some cost. They lose money in the transition, and they lose some money in terms of the flexibility that they have. There's also a market benefit from it, but right now it seems like in most cases the costs are outweighing the benefits. So we're going to need to do something to tip the scales, and we seem a little bit stuck. There really isn't and hasn't been a lot of large-scale investment in seafood traceability, and a lot of people have said, oh, we don't have the technology to do that. I'm pretty convinced over the last 24 hours that we have the technology to do that. There might be some tweaks and things that are needed to really put all the pieces together, but it seems like a lot of you guys have really solved for a lot of the problems that we need to bring this to market. We have the VMS, we have tracking systems, there's the mapping that can be used for awareness, there's barcoding systems. We also know that there is market interest. So there have been, I think there's something like upwards of 80%, maybe 90% of retailers in the US have made sustainable seafood pledges. And there's been increasing awareness of seafood fraud. And the markets and generally consumers say, we love to know where our fish came from. But yet, in spite of all that, there's only niche adoption. Even in Iceland, where all the boats actually have all the technology on board already and paid for to be able to do this. So why is that? One reason is, and I borrowed this slide from Oceana, so thank you, Twitter. Is that seafood traceability goes way beyond the vessel. Supply chains are really complex, and there's lots of other businesses involved that need to carry that traceability tagging through the system. It can cross borders many times, and does in most cases, and the tracing system has to stay intact throughout. So it's a complex system that requires specific action and specific technologies. This is a slide that I borrowed from one of the competitors in Fish 2.0. And there were several that have done things like this. There are plenty of systems to deal with this complexity of data. It's a big data issue. There's lots of data storage. There's tagging systems. The complexity of the data crossing borders should not be the issue. So what is the issue? And This is something I learned from another Fish 2.0 competitor. We asked them to do a SWOT analysis to talk about, what are the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities associated with their traceability technology. And from this, you can see that, they have a traceability. This is a competitor that had a traceability solution that they're using. They are buying and selling fish at scale. They have a technology that's timely, it's ahead of the competition, it's already been vetted, and it's based on existing technologies. They know that there's existing social pressure for supply chain traceability. They're looking for investment, but they're not investing in it. And the reason they're not investing in it is because of a policy gap. They're worried that policy might dictate a standard that's different from the one that they've developed, or even worse, it might dictate that all the companies that are importing into a country use somebody else's product. And so now, instead of this being an opportunity, it's a threat, and instead of being an opportunity for business growth, it's a distraction. Okay, so we need to find a way to make traceability not a distraction. So, in other sectors, policy mandates, especially those around standards around technology, have really accelerated growth. And you all know about these examples. Those zero emissions mandates really brought electric cars into the forefront. Electric car technology had been around for many years before the zero emission standards came in, and that's when the market started to develop these at scale. Renewable portfolio standards really put money into wind and solar investments. Wind and solar investments have been around for decades before they started to grow. And then one of our personal favorites, the TSA standard for airport security. That was around, that's X-ray technology, had been around for years, and really not packaged in a way that could be used by consumers. But that's an industry that's grown significantly in the last decade. So I think we need standards that, we need policy that drives and defines the standards if we want to have traceability come into place. Because once there are standards, and once we see that there will be a policy on the horizon around those standards, then companies will develop products that meet those standards, and investors will look at that. So, for example, I think Barbara Block talked yesterday about the tuna tags for bluefin tuna. My question would be, what are going to be the standards around those tuna tags? What do they have to look like? And will it be supported by policy? And if it was, I'm pretty sure someone will go out and develop it, and quite quickly. And I'm pretty sure that someone will invest in it. But if we don't have a standard and we don't have a policy, there's not a market for it. And so it will just be another technology that sits on a shelf. So back to Fish 2.0. So as all these companies were talking about their traceability systems and data management systems for fisheries, what the investor judges were asking them is, who is your customer? And they couldn't answer. And that's really the scary part, is that when you talk about traceability, who is supposed to be the customer? Is it supposed to be the vessel? Is it supposed to be the distributor? Is it supposed to be the retailer? Is it supposed to be the government? So now once we can put some policy in place, we can define who the customer is. Then we can define the market size. We can see how much money they have. We can price it accordingly. We can also decide what the value proposition is for them. There's some other things that need to be decided. Who has access to the technology? Who has access to the information? Who's going to own the data? What everybody wants in the marketplace, as someone else said yesterday, is a level playing field. And even though businesses might say we don't want this, if it's implemented across the board and it's a level playing field, they will adapt. They've adapted to many changes in fisheries regulation in the past whenever it's been implemented as a level playing field. And so I think, as Iceland has done, making very transparent systems is the best. We've all seen many times that once you make data and systems transparent, then users come out of the woodwork and find ways to use that information and data for good things. So people might use it for bad things, but generally we find more good uses than bad, and transparency is a good thing. So I want to encourage everyone that is working on policy to think about market policy and trade policy and developing policy around standards, as well as working on legal policy that is associated with enforcement. Because I think when we have both the market side and the legal side on the water, then we can have the whole supply chain involved. So just a little Venn diagram on what happened, why we need technology, the market infrastructure that brings that technology, market, and policy together. We're here now in the green where we have the technologies and the market infrastructure, and what we get is just trial deployments. If we just had policy and technology, we would just get non-compliance if there was no market infrastructure to bring that to market. And when we have policy and market infrastructure, then we just have technology challenges like the ones that the X-Prize folks work on. But what we really want is all three, and then we can get to large-scale investment and deployment. And I would say that right now, in terms of traceability, we are in the green. We're not in the orange. We're in the green. And so we need that policy piece to be added to this, and then we can be in that sweet spot in the middle. Thank you.
I'll take a question while Paul sets up.
Have you, if you tied it into seafood safety, would that help with the general public in terms of standardizing the safety and the fair trade of fish?
I think it would help. I think it could be anywhere. I think the businesses will tie it into safety because they're going to use the same tracking system to track safety issues as they will to track where their fish comes from for sustainability or other trade issues. So I think from a public point of view, what they want to know is that the company has taken care of all of these things.